Welcome to Hacking the Hustle. This is your host, Benjamin Sklar, and I am pumped to have my close friend, Pol Lezcano, on the podcast. What's up, Pol?
What's up, Benji? Thanks for having me.
Of
Glad
course.
to be here, man.
Yeah, it's awesome to have you on the podcast. I've been waiting for this since day one.
Yeah, me as well, but you called me late. I saw Patrick was on the pod before I was, and I was pretty offended by that
Yeah, shout out to
because
Patrick
both of
Perry.
you would not be alive if it wasn't for me.
I respect that. We'll get to that. So for those listening, a little background on Pol. Pol is from Barcelona, born and raised. He went to college in Austria, in Vienna, and then he moved to America and pursued the American dream, got his master's at Columbia in sustainability management, and now he works for Bloomberg in Manhattan, and he's working on their renewable energy desk. So he's responsible for managing projects from originations to portfolio acquisitions to research. And what we're going to be talking about today is being a European living in New York and the differences in culture, fossil fuels, renewable energy, and clean tech startups. I know Paul's favorite subject. So let's just kick it off, Paul. Tell us about how you're living. What's it like to be in Manhattan in quarantine?
Well, just to clarify, like my at Bloomberg, we're not part of building projects as such. We are just more or less a primary research shop, and our goal is help those building make smart decisions. But yeah, to your question, um, it's honestly, I don't know. It's weird to be here, to live in Manhattan under these circumstances. It's clearly something I would have never expected coming over from Europe. But at the same time, I feel sort of humbled to be here during these times because the city has changed a lot, and just being part of that transformation is honestly pretty impressive, and something that I would have probably not seen if I would have gone back to Spain once the pandemic's kicked off.
Mm-hmm. So you're working from home right now?
I'm working from home, yeah. So we were sent home around mid-March. Obviously, Bloomberg offices in Manhattan it's a pretty big building, a lot of people, so they had to take measures, obviously, pretty early.
Mm,
Yeah, so I've been working from home for the past months and just getting used to it, I guess. I don't have
very
any
cool.
other choice.
Very cool. So tell us, what are you researching these days? What's interesting to you in renewable energy?
Well, everything is interesting to me around renewable energy, but my focus is on solar, mostly on the distributed solar industry here in the U.S., which is a very, very particular one, and there are a lot of tons of interesting topics from acquisitions to um, to forecasting the industry, understanding what the hurdles are, why prices in the U.S. are so expensive compared to for at least for the residential side compared to other European countries. Um, and Bloomberg, our team, Bloomberg NEF, New Energy Finance, we do everything. So the fact that I'm on the solar team doesn't necessarily mean that I don't touch upon other technologies. We work closely with the wind team, but we also look at everything from hydrogen to metals, to digitalization in the oil and gas industry. So everything you could possibly imagine that involves like this transformation in the energy sector is covered by us. So
That's
right now, like my interests are and works are in solar, but again, as I said, it's very cross functional. So I might be able to do other types of stuff in the future too.
nice. So tell us, what has changed because of the coronavirus? How have the energy markets been disrupted or gone up and down?
Well, the obviously the the oil shock has been all over the news, and I'm sure everybody already knows about it. Which another thing that's more that's intuitive too, but people are not as aware as the oil shock um, is outside of all of the energy nerds is like electricity demand in the U.S. Has decreased over the past couple months, and that has consequences for utilities because essentially the revenue base lowers. But it has been interesting to see how the residential piece of the load has increased because everybody is working from home, whereas all the commercial and industrial load types are more or less are decreasing. But you see the nuances between different states and different utility zones within different states. So it's interesting because at the end, electricity is sort of a reflection of human consumption and human behavior. So for us, it's been like very very busy months, but very exciting to see the different nuances across the U.S. and across the world. So
Interesting. What do you foreshadow happening in the next 3 to 6 months? Do you feel like
um,
I'm curious to hear your answer.
yeah, well, for forecasting is a very very tough job today, just because everything depends on how many waves, if any, we get again of the virus, and how many lockdowns and what the measures are going to be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's clear is that people have realized that, like, economies and politicians have realized that people need to get back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in the U.S., it has been very politicized, which is unfortunate. But at some point, um, people will get back to work. On the renewable energy space, a lot of safety procedures will need to be in place in construction, social distancing. So
Mm-hmm.
it might take longer. It might be a little bit more expensive to build. Um, but at the end, there's like people will need to get back out and start building and start working. But I don't see normal the like a normal environment coming until 2021 for certain.
Yeah, I believe everyone would agree with you. So I have a question. I'm living out here at the east end of Long Island, and there's a lot of farms and a lot of land out here. And there's two large solar parks that have arisen recently. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious because I know you, the mindset, the process that goes into analyzing a property, a piece of land, and running the numbers, figuring out if it's worth pursuing and putting solar energy, solar farms. And can you explain it to me and those listening how this industry works, from buying the land to the putting the what do you call them, the solar shield,
Modules,
solar modules,
the
and then
panels, yeah.
the panels, that's what the word I was looking for, and then the energy, electricity that comes from it, and who you sell that to, and the taxes. Can you break us down, like, from a bird's eye view in a basic way, how this is the new future of energy?
Right. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not gonna go very deep into the tax aspect of it. Besides saying that solar is associated with a 30% investment tax credit, 26% investment tax credit now in 2020, which is going to step down in the next couple of years. Um,
Can you explain that
but
real
what
quick?
I'm going to say is,
For those of you for those who don't understand what that means, can you explain why
yeah.
that's important?
So essentially, the equity owner of a solar project um, gets a 26% tax credit on the total cost of the solar project that he or she is building. So if you're building and let's say 30% now to just round it up, which is what it was in 2019. If you're building a 1 million project, then 30% of the $1 million will, like, you'll be able to get a tax credit for that. So essentially, when you're going to pay taxes next year, you'll get a 30% credit. So it's essentially telling you, if you put the money down, you build the project, we're going to give you 30% of that value. We're going to lower it from your taxes next year.
Got it. Yeah, instead of paying taxes on $1 million, you're paying it on 700,000 because of the 30% tax.
No, it's just you use the base. Your base is the total project cost. Your project was $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
You invested $1 million in a solar project,
mm-hmm.
and you have your business. You are, Benjamin Sklar LLC,
mm-hmm.
and for 2021, you're gonna have a tax base of $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So 30%, or in this case, 26% of that $1 million solar project,
mm-hmm.
you'll be able to decrease it from your 5 million tax base for next year.
Got it.
So
okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep it going because we're getting I try to make
right.
it.
I told you that if we go deep
yeah.
into this, then it gets a little bit complicated, and I guess people are not accountants.
Yeah.
Are going to be bored.
You're making me take out my glasses. So now I got to see you fuzzy. So let's keep it going. For those who are interested in solar as investors.
Yeah.
And they're developers buying the land, keep it going, the process of going about. I'm curious, how would I go about doing that?
So if we're talking here about what's front of the meter or utility scale projects, which are the ones you're referring to, those that are on the ground, basically,
mm-hmm.
not on roofs. So you first need to look for a viable site. You need to look for a site that obviously has a certain dimensions. Ideally, sites that are not that don't have a lot of tree coverage. Sites that are close to any interconnection point, any being a substation ideally, or any type of grid infrastructure that allows you to be interconnected to the electrical grid fairly easy.
Interesting.
And then once you essentially find a site that is doesn't have tree coverage, is close to a substation, doesn't have any shading, it's not very steep, so you have to look to make sure that it's flat, because the physical implications for placing the panels are obvious if the side has some kind of unlevel areas. And then once you have a good site, you can be the developer yourself, and you said, hey, like, I originate the project, meaning I originate the site, and you get all the permits necessary to build. You have to get some town approvals. You have to talk to the local utility for interconnection, and some like stakeholders are always involved, like neighbors. It's always a big deal because some neighbors might oppose. Like, you might say, I don't want to drive by and see those like ugly panels looking at me when I'm in my car. So that's always a big issue, especially in the Northeast. So you can be the developer yourself and essentially deal with all of this and get the permits until you get the permits, which essentially is telling you, hey, we're telling you can start building. And then at this point, some developers, what they do is they say, very similar to real estate, I got all the paperwork, I did all this hard work, and now I'm going to put it in the market. And I'm going to go to, other developers who are essentially specialized in what comes next, which is procuring the modules, all the engineering, building, doing the construction and such, and then getting it to operation. So I'm the developer. I get all the permits. I say either I'll find a partner who does that, or I do it myself if I'm a bigger company and I have the resources. So once either a third party or yourself, you start building the project, you start getting all the panels in place, you get the inverters in place, everything that needs to be put on the site for the project to be operational. You then have people from the utility come and essentially test, make sure that the project is viable, that it's not gonna overload the electrical system, the electrical grid around it, and you put it operational. And then that system, which is another important piece, is always how is it going to make money? You have the tax incentives associated with it that we talked about, which are a pretty big deal for the industry. But then on the other hand, you need a revenue stream. It's electricity, it's the commodity, so you're going to be selling it to someone. So you can either sell it what's called just merchant, meaning you sell it to whatever power prices are and the time where you're producing energy, or you have a fixed contract, which is usually the structure that has driven solar in the past, meaning you have an off-taker, and that off-taker is going to buy all the electricity that you produce, or part of the electricity that you produce, for a fixed price over 10, 15, 20 years. So maybe the projects that you see in Long Island, I'm assuming those projects are community solar, which is it's a little bit of a trickier structure, but essentially those projects are selling to people like you and I who would subscribe to the project. And they accumulate a bunch of people like us who are interested in solar, who want to save some money. And they'll say, hey, well, like, you can get a chunk of the project, and you'll get the credits for all the electricity that it produces every month. The electricity is not going to come directly to your house just because of physics. Because once the electricity goes into the grid, it just moves freely, and the electron that comes out of the solar system is not necessarily going to be the electron that comes and powers your light, but it will be treated as such. It will be treated as if that electron was actually used for your own house. And that fixed price that I was talking about that you enter, either you and I in a community solar project, or a big company like Google, is usually at a discount to the current utility prices, which is the economic driver of the technology, because you're able to build solar and sell solar cheaper than the price you pay to PSE&G or Con-Edison in New York.
Wow, that was very educational. I learned a lot. I liked how you broke it down step by step through the whole process.
I'm glad to hear that.
What'd you say?
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
You always have to be careful with words you use and trying to make it as simple as possible. Not that it's rocket science at all, but some things are counterintuitive at first when you hear them. So
yeah.
Hopefully that was clear now.
That was. Let's change topics. Let's go away from business and towards culture. So you're from Spain. You grew up in Spain. You went to college in Austria, and now here you are in New York City. What's it like to be a foreigner, an immigrant? Tell me about that, the pros and cons, and what do you think is the talk of the town amongst Spaniards in the city?
Yeah, well, it's hard to be it's hard to be labeled as immigrant in New York, to be honest, just because there's such a mix of cultures that people are just used to foreigners in the city. If I was in I don't know, in Tennessee or Louisiana or somewhere else, I'll probably have a different experience. Not necessarily bad, but probably a different experience. The worst part of being an immigrant in the US, though, that is like regardless of which city you are, is paperwork and bureaucracy and this visa, this other visa, and then you you need to make sure that you have all your papers in place, that you have a social security number, and
Hmm.
so much is tied also to your work, to the university. There's a lot of uncertainty around it, so it's a very tough process. Long wait lists. Like usually, the conversations with all of our friends in Spain always always involve some kind of comment around like how my visa or how your visa process is going, or whether they're gonna renew my visa next year or not. So it's hard to make plans in the long term. So definitely you feel like at the end you feel a little bit exhausted about that, and kind of sad because it feels like, it feels like, yeah, they're making it hard. And why do I want to keep pursuing that? But at the end the benefits outweigh the costs. So that's why we're still here.
Interesting.
But
I wonder
yeah.
how the immigration system could be improved. If you were running it, what would you change?
If I was running the immigration system, well, I don't know. That's a question I've never asked myself before. I would, one thing that I can say for certain is that I would make, and that also affects you as well, or would have affected you as well, is I would encourage exchanges between universities around the world, and make it much easier for foreign students to come here, but also for American students to go abroad, because that experience is something unique and something that we need to take more advantage of, and that American students are definitely not taking advantage of. And I realize that I've dodged the question on like running immigration, but essentially if I would be running immigration, then I would definitely try to focus on making it easier for smart, talented people to come, but also try to make it easier for all the people in the culture and arts to come to the U.S. Because it's a sector that struggles a lot because doesn't pay a lot, mostly, so it's very hard to pursue your dreams there. And there are a lot of very talented people out there, that who, if they come to the U.S. and with the resources that the U.S. has, I'm sure it would be good. It would be like a very
Yeah.
positive experience for everybody, and especially for people in the U.S. So that's certainly one priority I would have. In terms of
Nice.
bureaucracy improvements, don't act like, I don't know. I would say make things online. You still need to send so many things physically. Like I never used the post in Europe. I've never used the post before. I've never printed application forms, filled them out, and then send them via post, and then send checks for it. Yeah, I didn't even know what a check was, besides what we saw in like TV shows, in Spain. I didn't even know what it was until I
Wow.
came here. So
Crazy.
this is something very ridiculous to
All
us.
right, so tell me about what's going on in Spain. Tell me about from politics to what your friends are talking about. Madrid versus Barcelona. What's there to know about in pop culture in España?
Pop culture in España. Yeah. Well, right now there's not a lot of pop culture because of the lockdown, but Spain is never disappointing. And I would say people are realizing that they will not have the same vacations they had a couple years ago. So, which is a positive. It's going to be a positive thing in my view. Everybody's staying within the peninsula, so hopefully local tourism is going to be encouraged, and at least we can help our Spanish people who like will struggle, who have like some rural tourist house somewhere in the middle of the northern part of Spain.
Yeah.
At least be able to have a good summer season.
Hmm.
But my point is, everybody, young people will stay in the country. People will go to the vacation places around the country. So a lot of friends of mine who would usually take a trip and go, to the US, or would go to South America, or to Italy or Southeast Asia, are going to stay this time in Spain, and they're going to either rent a house where we usually spend vacations at the beach, or they would just rent a boat and maybe sail along the Mediterranean. So the cool thing is that people will stay. You'll see a lot of friendly faces that you hadn't seen for many years. And people are already, Spanish people. People are already thinking, okay, how are we going to be partying this summer? So what are we going to do? I don't want to go to those clubs and just be, windowless clubs and just, be touching people all the time and people be sweating around me because it's summer. So people are already thinking, okay, let's try to find cool spots where we can all hang out, have a couple drinks, or let's find like beach clubs that have a lot of space and that are outdoors, and let's go there. Spanish people, young Spanish people, always come up with new ways to have fun.
Love that. Yeah, Paul and I met in Barcelona. I studied abroad there, and he was a volunteer counselor, and he took care of me essentially, making sure I didn't kill myself from partying.
More or less.
Great times.
Was not an easy task. It was probably one of the hardest tasks I had.
I respect that. All right, so before I let you go, I want to do a new thing that it's called let's come up with a name. Quick question countdown. And I'm going to ask you questions, and you're going to give me quick answers. If I gave you $100 million to invest in energy, what would you invest in and why?
Hydrogen. Solution for baseload power and decarbonize the industry sector.
Interesting. That's a whole nother podcast right there. Hydrogen.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have thought of that.
And you should get someone else.
Okay, second question. What's a clean tech startup that we should know about and follow?
There's so many. I would say I forgot the name of it. It's a startup that is essentially doing low carbon technologies for refrigerants. You should definitely look up for it because refrigerants is a sector that has been long overseen by people in the space, both in the energy space, but also in the climate change conversations. And it's a sector that definitely has a lot of room to pick back up.
Nice. Okay. Third question. What's something that you and other nerds like you in the renewable energy space know about and it's obvious, and for those of us who aren't in the know have no idea about?
Good question. How cheap solar and wind is really, like how cheap it really is, and how much more efficient it really is compared to fossil fuels.
Okay, great. Next question. When are we going to stop using oil to drive in cars? When are electric cars going to be every car?
We actually just released our electric vehicle outlook, and when I say we, just because Bloomberg NEF did it, I don't take any credit for that. And even 2050, there's still going to be internal combustion engines on the roads per their projections, and I totally trust them. Definitely, like the share will decrease, but doesn't seem like we're getting completely rid of oil by 2050.
30 years from now. That's a long time from now, relatively. Okay.
And we're still going to be using by 2050, just to clarify.
That's not good news. Okay, so what's a amazing business book that you recommend?
Amazing business book.
Mm-hmm.
Masters of I think it's called, I don't know if that's the podcast or the book, but it's Reid Hoffman's book on
Masters of Scale. It's a podcast.
Masters of Scale is a podcast, and he has a book about that, which I don't know if it has the same name or not, but if you look Reid Hoffman anywhere, that book will come up first, and that should be a startup Bible.
Nice.
Or a scale-up Bible rather than a startup Bible.
Nice. I've listened to many episodes of his podcast. Definite genius entrepreneur. All right, what's one more or two? What's one Spanish word that you wish English-speaking people knew, and you think they're like pendejos because they don't know it or they say it wrong?
Oh yeah, I have the exact answer to that question. The word is joder.
Nice. What is that?
Joder is like, can we swear here?
Definitely, you can swear.
Okay, it's like shit. It's like fuck, but it's not elegant, but it's not essentially being vulgar. The word is not vulgar per such. It's definitely not elegant again, but it's not vulgar. So, and you have it's very relieving to be able to say joder because of the J and the R at the end. So
Joder.
I wish I could just use it more often to just express like how I feel about something.
Very nice. All right, so where can people connect with you online, Paul?
They can just look me up at LinkedIn, and if they think my picture is pretty enough and my bio is interesting enough for them, I'm always happy to talk further. And if they have any questions on solar, renewable energy, Spain, Colombia, studying abroad, or taking care of Benjis,
nice.
Always there for them.
Awesome. I almost forgot. Last question. It's my signature go-to question now. If you could change and improve one thing about the world, what would it be?
Access for disabled people to higher education.
Wow, beautiful. Why?
It's been always in my mind, but
access for disabled people to higher education.
Yep.
Very nice. That's deep. That's another podcast I'll probably invite you back for, and we'll talk only about that.
Yeah, happy to, man.
Awesome. Well, it's such an honor to have you on the podcast, Paul. Te extraño mucho. De hecho, de menos. I'm away. And I look forward to seeing you and your amazing career in energy.
Hopefully, man, when this is over, we'll see our faces again.
Amen.
I miss you too.
Great to see you, Paul.
Good to see you, hermano.
Bye-bye.
Bye.